Well, good evening and welcome to the Board of Education meeting for Weld County School District 6. This is the 22nd day of February, 2021. This meeting will now come to order. Please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Crane, will you call the roll for us, please?
Mr. Hafley?
Present.
Mrs. Mash?
Present.
Mr. Matthews?
Present.
Mrs. Mueller?
Present.
Ms. Pappas?
Present.
Mrs. Solis?
Present.
Mr. Talley?
Present.
7 members present.
Thank you, Ms. Crane. Well, we're glad that you're joining us again tonight. Just want to take a few minutes to recognize some people and our district nonprofit, the Success Foundation, recognized some of our teachers recently and our educators. And so I want to extend congratulations to Kara Semple and Jeff Cranston, who were recognized as leaders among leaders. Jenny Barton and Scott Inlows, Stephen Paulson were recognized as Educators of the Year. So congratulations to those educators and those administrators in our district. Well-deserved recognition. Also want to let everyone know that we just completed what's called the CAFR, and that is our annual financial report that normally comes out in November, late November or early December. You can always watch for that, but that's an important date always on our calendar. And just so everyone knows, you certainly can go back and look at that report that our auditors gave us, but our auditors did give us what's called a clean or unmodified opinion, and that's always what we're looking for. That is actually always, at least in my experience, always what we have received. And so great thanks to our financial team, Megan Sponsler, Mandy Hydock, for their excellent work year in and year out in keeping us straight financially. One last thing, that public education's been in the news a lot lately, and in the news it's not always good. We often see parents arguing with teachers, or teachers arguing with parents, or education administrations arguing with teachers unions, and whenever I see that, I'm so thankful that we are where we are, and we have the organization that we do, and the group of people and community that we do. And when we decided to go back in person in August, our teachers never flinched. When we had to go fully remote in November, our parents never balked. And that is a testament to the amount of trust that we have in our system and to the excellent leadership that we have in our system that's created that trust. And so very thankful that we live in the community in which we do, and we have the excellent educators and wonderful parents and wonderful leaders that we do in this district. I'm very proud to be part of this district as a parent and as a school board member. And that is all I have for tonight, I think, as my comments. And we're now to the public participation for our agenda items. And I don't believe we have anybody signed up to speak tonight. We will have some people signed up to speak later in our meeting, so you'll have to hang on for that. We are now to our work session report.
Board of Education President Michael Matthews began the work session with comments and updates from board members, and then proceeded to review the calendar of upcoming events and meeting dates. The auditors provided an update on the annual district audit. The board briefly discussed community engagement and debriefed the work session to conclude. Thank
you, Ms. Crane. The next item is our superintendent's report. So Dr. Pelch, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, President Matthews, and I will, I'm going to speak to things COVID again. So some around vaccine and some around just what the data is looking like, and around our own testing here in the district. So I think I'll start first with just talking about the testing here in the district, and just share that here at the district site, we've been administering that BINAX test, which is that rapid result test that we get results within 15 minutes. And we've also been administering a PCR test called a curative. we've administered right at 300 tests just from the site here. That doesn't include the probably dozens and dozens of tests that have been administered at the 9 school sites that have the Binax available. The good news behind that is that 70 of our staff have been able to return earlier from quarantine as a result of testing negative on the Binax test here through the district drive-through. So it's working. The plan we had developed is working and is making a difference. I'll also share that we have found some positive students and staff through the testing here in the district. So we are catching some of those positives and able to quarantine more quickly and hopefully to slow the spread of the virus. Just as a reminder, on Friday, the Greeley-Evans positivity rate came back down under 5%. So that's good news. We were at 4.84%. Weld County is just over 5% at 5.37%, and we're both still lagging behind the state positivity rate at 3.64%. We are still seeing positive and probable cases, as I indicated 2 weeks ago. Right now, presently, well, as of this morning, it's gone up throughout the day, unfortunately, but as of this morning, we had 85 probable or positive cases in the district currently. As comparison, by the end of January, in the month of January, we had 158, but in November, and remember November is the month we ended up going fully remote, we actually had 298 probable or positive cases. So we are seeing things move in a more positive direction around the cases. I do need to share that today was a rough day on our health services team. They have put out, I just saw another one, at least cohorts or some sort of quarantine at 9 different sites in the district just today. So we continue to address those probable or positive cases. We are really making excellent headway on vaccines. On February 1, we were told by the heads of the health departments in both Larimer and Weld County that it would be 6 to 8 weeks for educators to get their first vaccine. We are over 50% of our educators having scheduled or received their first vaccine. And 95% of the staff who have said they want a vaccine have been scheduled, or they've received that vaccine first and second. So we feel like we're making some really good headway with vaccines. I know that the headline in the paper last week, it kind of oversold the possibility of bringing high school students back on a more regular schedule, but I do want to tell you that we have been talking with our high school leadership here now for several days. We continue to have those conversations to look at with the positivity rate coming down and with the numbers of staff who we are able to have vaccinated, is it feasible? Is it possible to be able to bring high school students back on a more regular basis than just 2 days a week? So there's a lot of logistics we're working on right now. Of course, transportation is a big one because we had to limit the numbers of students, on a school bus. Of course, nutrition services, we'd now be feeding a lot more students at those high schools that are already very big high schools. And then, of course, class size. And are there ways we can manage class size so we don't have, 35 or 40 high schoolers in a classroom and all, 1,600 of those students out in the hallway during a passing period. So we're working on those pieces. I'm hopeful that we can begin to bring more students back in. We've already brought in many of our students who receive services on an IEP, or students who are receiving services for English language development. Many of those students are with us, 4 days a week instead of just the 2. So I'm hopeful we can continue to increase that, and really pleased about the folks we're working with on these plans. President Matthews, I just want to say thank you for your comments at the beginning about public education and how it looks right now in the country. I think public education really is in the center of a lot of negative attention and a lot of criticism. And these are just really, really hard times to be an educator, to be a parent counting on education every single day for your child, and to be leaders like us here in the boardroom tonight as we're making these decisions. And I'll say again, I haven't always made the perfect decision or maybe even, the best decision, but I've always worked hard as you all have, for us to make the best decision we could with the information that we have. And my pledge to you is to continue to do that and to provide a voice for teachers and other educators in our system as we make these decisions. And I'm thankful for the relationship with our Teachers Association. And, we began to work on that relationship here several years ago, and it has just continued to get better and better and more productive, and I'm so thankful for that. We're seeing a lot of divisiveness between teachers associations and parents, teachers associations and school boards and superintendents, and I'm just really pleased that Miss Lee, the president of the association, and I can have difficult conversations. She can call me early in the morning and say, what the heck is going on? What can you tell me about this? And that's the kind of relationship we have committed to, and we may not always fully agree, and we may push back on each other, but we are solving very complex problems, and it is a relationship that is working for the benefit of District 6. So thank you for your comments at the beginning and to allow me to add on to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pilch. Our next item is the approval of an agenda, and so we'll need a motion to proceed.
I move that the Board of Education of Greeley-Evans School District 6 approves the agenda as presented.
Second.
Thank you both. Is there any discussion on the agenda? Hearing none, Ms. Crane, will you give us a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Hafley?
Aye.
Mrs. Mash?
Aye.
Mr. Matthews?
Aye.
Mrs. Mueller?
Aye.
Ms. Pappas?
Aye.
Mrs. Solis?
Aye.
Mr. Talley?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you, Ms. Crane. Our next item is our consent agenda, and so we also need a motion for this.
I move that the Board of Education of Greeley-Evans School District 6 approves items as presented on the consent agenda and authorizes the officers to sign any and all contracts.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda? Ms. Crane, will you give us a roll call vote then?
Mr. Hafley?
Aye.
Mrs. Mash?
Aye.
Mr. Matthews?
Aye.
Mrs. Mueller?
Aye.
Ms. Pappas?
Aye.
Mrs. Solis?
Aye.
Mr. Talley?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you, Ms. Crane. Our next item of business is a Dream Team scholarship presentation. And so we welcome the Dream Team here tonight to present these scholarships to our students. So please come forward to the podium.
Good evening, board. Thank you so much for having us here tonight. My name is Elizabeth Barber, and I'm the executive director of the Greeley Dream Team, and this is Miranda Ochoa, our assistant director of programs. We're here tonight to celebrate with you, and we'll have a video to share of all of our students. I normally would have had them all lined up and filled in here, but I just wanted to share a little bit about the organization and the work. And as you know, the Dream Team works with a diverse population of students. We build relationships, we mentor, we encourage, we help to educate them so they become the leaders of tomorrow by going off to the post-secondary option of their choice. For over 30 years, the Greeley Dream Team has awarded scholarships out to deserving students. And in fact, in the past 19 years alone, we have given out over $468,000 to over 365 deserving students to make college a reality for them and their family. The scholarships offered to students in our program who have demonstrated academic potential, have participated in school clubs and activities, who have participated in community service events, and some of them have even overcome personal obstacles and barriers in order to achieve this tonight. But this year, we are excited to say we are celebrating 25 deserving seniors, and the board is allocating $35,500 in scholarships. Included in our scholarship celebrations tonight is the Delia and John W. Hafley Scholarship, valued at $1,400, which is honoring two longtime Greeley educators who wish to make a lasting impact in students in need. The Hafley Scholarship will be awarded to 2 students this year. We're also excited to celebrate the Bond Family Summit Award in addition to our scholarships. This award will benefit 2 Dream Team students who have demonstrated superior academic potential at $2,500 in addition to their Dream Team scholarship. So at this time, I'd like to play our presentation so you can meet all of the 25 participants that'll be receiving scholarships this year. Am I in play? Shall we start? Here we go. Sorry. That's okay. Thanks. Thank you so much. We want to honor all 25 of our students. Usually we've packed the place and it's very loud and noisy, so here's to next year, right? But we'll pass along their congratulations. Thank you so much on behalf of our board of directors and our staff. We're so appreciative of our partnership, of your support, of Dr. Pilt and the administration, and we are looking forward to serving more students and having them come back and make a lasting impact on our community, so thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barber. Before you leave, I think we might have a few questions or comments from board members, if that's okay for you.
Yeah.
Ms. Pappas.
Well, of course, it's just so sad not to have the students here tonight, but that was really a beautiful slideshow, so thank you for that. I just want to say what an incredible thing it is to be on the scholarship interviewing committee, and just to let people know how resilient these kids are, how smart, how talented, caring, and thoughtful, and I'm so honored to be part of this organization, so thank you very much for all you do. And congratulations, of course, to all these wonderful students.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Solis.
So I know we have a big gathering every year. We actually get to hear a lot of their stories, which I'm going to really miss this year. It's so impactful. And you talk about leaders for our future, but a lot of these kids have already been leaders. The things they overcome, the things that they do, the amount of things that are on their plate at such a young age. I'm just amazed at some of their stories and the things, and we as adults have a lot to learn from them, and that's one of the reasons why I love going to that event so much. So please tell them how grateful we are for them being a part of our district, and thank you for working so hard, and congratulations on their scholarships.
Thank you, Ms. Solis.
Thank you, Ms. Solis. Mr. Talley.
Just want to say I'm super proud and so happy, and thank you all and everyone that's involved in Dream Team for being that positive role model and for being that lifeline for a lot of our students and for giving them the opportunities that you do. It's just amazing. I was looking at this first slide and just the quote at the bottom, keep your eyes on the stars and your feet on the ground. And that is so true now with everything that's going on in our community and in our world with COVID and everything. These students have shown us that they're hard chargers and they're still going to move forward, and they're not going to stop. And so just super proud and so happy, and I wish that they could all be here and we could shake their hands. But I know that'll come again in the future, and I know that they will hopefully be doing great things, and we'll run into them sometime in our lives. So thank you. Please
Mr.
pass it
Talley.
along.
Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate the great work that you guys do. And please do extend our heartfelt congratulations to these students. We're so proud of them and so thankful for the work that you guys do.
Thank you. And a lot of them were watching tonight. They were pretty excited about that. So.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate everything.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Our next item of business is the Greeley Education Association Starfish Award. And so I'd like to invite GA President Ms. Andy Lee to the podium.
Hello, everyone. My name is Andy Lee. I'm the president of GEA, and I love being able to go into classrooms and see the awesome things that's happening. And when we have the privilege of being able to see such awesome students with us, it really, really emphasizes why what we do is so important. I'd like to introduce you to Jennifer. I'm actually going to have to introduce you to the pretend Jennifer because she just got quarantined with one of her little ones. So she'll be returning to in-person learning on March 3rd. But I had the pleasure of spending an entire day with Jennifer the other day, and she was amazing. She is a second grade teacher at Scott, and she is a special needs teacher. So she deals with kiddos who have everything from a slight disability in terms of academic functioning to some more significant issues. And one thing she really noticed is that with the virtual learning, with the going in and out of quarantine, there's lots of gaps, and it's hard for some of these kiddos. So she was working really, really hard to make sure, whether they were in person or online, that these students got the very best education possible. So I started off my day with a little kindergartner, And it was amazing watching her decode words and read and work on her L sounds. Then we switched over to 3 youngsters who are learning how to read. And it was really cool to watch because not only did we do a PowerPoint, but we also had an interactive portion of our day. And I was actually getting into it. I was reading the sentence and trying to draw my little imaginary line on what picture matched. And it was really engaging. And what I found out from an educator point of this is that really cool activity that she works hard and she does individually every single week, it takes about 2.5 hours to prepare. So it's not like COVID suddenly came with an instruction book. So she had to create all of these resources, and she does it every single week. So her students are learning something new every single day. And that is why we want to say thank you once again for those Wednesday afternoons. If you ever wonder if those Wednesday afternoons are valuable, I watch it. I get to go into the classrooms and I get to see how the teachers are using that time. And it's really amazing. I switched over to a CLD class and we were learning compound words. And one of the little ones who wasn't totally verbal, he was trying, man, you put flashcards in front of him and he can figure out ladybug with no problem. He takes the cards, he was able to arrange it in a way. So they figured out a way to get the communication and the learning happening in spite of what we're dealing with. And that is truly what's amazing about our educators at District 6, is we are educating and we're teaching and we're learning and we're being students in spite of all of the stuff that's happening. So I wanted to give a huge shout out to Jennifer specifically, but all of our educators who are in our special services and deal with our kiddos who are dealing with gaps, because we're all going to have gaps. And it's going to be really, really important that as we come out of COVID, we give each other a little bit of grace. And our test scores may not be fantastic all the time, but that's because we've gone through a huge lift this year. And the very fact that our kids are learning is pretty darned amazing to watch. So it was a lot of fun, and I look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. And again, extend our congratulations to Jennifer. Sorry that she could not be here tonight. Our next item of business is our Council of Student Representatives report. And so I'd like to, Dr. Phelps, maybe I just turn this over to you first.
Thank you, President Matthews. I'd like to invite Dr. Insoon Olson to the podium. She, as you all know, is our principal at Northridge High School and our lead administrator working with the Council of Student Reps. It's my understanding that Dr. Olson will introduce Mr. Jeff Casey and maybe the students. So Dr. Olson.
Good evening, President Matthews, our school board, and Dr. Pilch. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to allow our Council of Student Representatives to present to you. And tonight we have the students from University High School. So I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Jeff Casey, who will introduce his students.
Thank you for having us this evening. I get the pleasure of introducing our students. And before I do that, I will also say a thank you to Dr. Olson. She has been a great colleague and collaborative with us at university, and it's been amazing to be able to work with her, and she's been leading this work for quite a while, so that has been wonderful as well. So I have with me Mariah White. Mariah is a senior at university. She's been here, at university since 8th grade. She's involved in tennis. She's been on this board for 2 years. And she wrote that she also is working a part-time job. She hopes to advance the world's knowledge in the idea of sleeping and consciousness when she's older. She's actually doing her senior project working with sleep studies on lucid dreams in different ages of students. So that's a pretty fascinating project. And Miranda Cerna. Miranda has been at university since 6th grade. She also has been on this board for 2 years, and they're both seniors this year. Miranda is involved in track and football, choir, and tri-m. And for her senior project, she is delivering, sort of as we speak, in the middle of delivering, care packages for first responders at fire stations and police stations around the area. So Both of these are wonderful young ladies who represent our school and our community well. And this year, usually the Council of Student Representatives works on more global problems and things they can try to address as multiple high schools. This year, with the challenges of isolation and COVID, they're each focusing on things at their own schools. And so they've been asked to look at things at our school and see ways that they can help support us in improving through this time. So they have a little bit to share with you.
Good evening. We would like to start by thanking the board for allowing us to have our voices heard and our views on our prospective school year. This year has included so many highs and lows that can be seen by any member of the school district community. One of these things that I have seen personally, that some teachers do not seem to be well versed enough on the technology given to them to allow for the current school year to go on. This may not be the cause for all teachers, yet teachers having no training on the technology can cause learning to become that much harder for students on a screen. Don't get us wrong, these teachers are doing a fantastic job with what they can to support us in these troubling times. Yet if teachers were in some way more well-versed or trained on the subject, that could help teachers to create a more safe and understood learning environment for all students.
Although COVID hit, that didn't stop any of us from making the most out of what we can. It's definitely been hard not getting to go to class or walk the hallways with my senior class, but I'm grateful that I get to see some of them around. Even though tons of motivation has been lost due to hybrid learning, the teachers around the district and the faculty deserve a huge round of applause for keeping us on our toes and getting through these tough times. Although university doesn't face too many challenges, the one thing I would love to see for our school is to shoot for more help and resources for students doing remote learning. Coming from someone who's a social butterfly, remote learning was very difficult for me and it drained me of my social skills. I would definitely like to be able to see more safe and socially distanced meetings or events for remote learning kids. Granted, some of them haven't even stepped building in their school since last year. Thank you. Do you guys have any questions?
Are there any questions or comments from board members for these guys? Ms. Pappas.
Sorry, I can't pass up the time to make a comment. Just want to thank you both for coming tonight. I know that you're working really hard, and I'm just so impressed every time I attend one of your meetings how thoughtful you are and trying to figure things out. So I just want to thank you both for coming tonight. It's nice to see you.
Thank you, Ms. Pappas. I don't know if we have any other questions for you, but thank you again for being here, for taking the time, for sharing your perspective and your concerns, and please come back anytime. Thank you so much.
Hey, President Matthews, may I?
Oh, certainly,
We have
sorry.
a short meeting tonight, so
Yeah.
I know I don't usually, but I guess I'm just curious, ladies. You talked about coming back for some more in-person activities, more in-person meetings. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Like, what are some things you think would work well and that we could figure out and keep safe for kids?
So maybe just having more like in-person, with teachers or even with classmates, because I know when we did remote learning, for me personally, I wasn't getting anything with other people, and it could be hard sitting in your room locked up, not getting any of that social contact.
If you had the opportunity and your peers had the opportunity to be in school more than on the hybrid schedule, do you think that you would come back? And do you think your peers would want to come back?
I'm 4 days, so.
You are 4 days,
Yeah.
good.
I know a lot of other kids would definitely like to be in the building, especially as seniors. It's hard to sit your last few days inside your room and, not get all that teacher and student type of stuff.
I'm actually full remote, and I think that going back for all 4 days would actually really help me and some of my peers a lot. I have a younger sister who goes to university, and she's having like a really hard time being able to connect with her teachers through a screen, and I think that that's one of the problems that we're facing being fully remote.
Thank you for that. And please know it's not meant for just a question at university. This is something we're exploring at all of our high schools right now, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you, Mr. Casey.
Our next item on the agenda is the second read and repeal of policy BCC, violations of policy by a board member. And this is a second read, which means that this is an action item that needs a motion.
I move that the Board of Education of Greeley-Evans School District 6 repeals policy BCC, violations of policy by a board member as presented.
Second.
Thank you both. I don't know if there's anything that we need to say on this. If you've been tuning into our board meetings for any length of time, you know we've been going through policies and updating policies and eliminating policies for some time. And so I'm glad for there to be any comments or questions on this. But if there aren't, and I'm not seeing any, Ms. Crane, will you give us a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Haefele?
Aye.
Mrs. Mash?
Aye.
Mr. Matthews?
Aye.
Mrs. Mueller?
Aye.
Ms. Pappas?
Aye.
Mrs. Solis?
Aye.
Mr. Talley?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you, Ms. Crane. The next item on our agenda is our legislative update. And so I'd like to invite Mr. Nate Fall to the podium. But Dr. Pilch, is there anything you'd like to say as he travels?
Yes, thank you, President Matthews. You know, we hired in-house legal counsel this past fall, and I am quite frankly thrilled to have this tremendous resource in our district. Not only has Nate proven to step up in many situations that are preventing us from future litigation and also managing some current litigation that is going on, but he is also, as an attorney, particularly interested in legislation and in the law. And so I'm very excited to have an expert coming in to talk to you about what's coming down the pike in terms of legislation, rather than me trying to dance my way through that without that expertise of having been an attorney. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Nate.
Thank you, Dr. Pilch, for that amazing introduction. I'll see if I can live up to those expectations. But thank you, President Matthews, members of the board. I hope you're as excited as I am at 6:45 p.m. to talk about a legislative update, so I'll do my best to keep this entertaining. You know, today I just want to give you kind of a broad overview of what's happening. Obviously, the legislative session just started last week. And so I'll leave some time at the end for any questions or comments you might have. So let's get into it. Just some background, as I just mentioned, the legislative session restarted last week on Tuesday. There's been a slew of new bills that have been introduced in both the House and in the Senate. The deadline for the introduction of new bills will be this Thursday in the Senate, and it won't be until March 2nd that the House will be prohibited. A lot of the focus of the General Assembly this year is for pandemic-related legislation. There are still continuing issues that they're dealing with. But there's also some uncertain budget situations for the upcoming state budget. The state's in kind of this strange position right now because there's this extra one-time revenue on hand because pre-pandemic tax collections came in much higher than they were projected to a year ago. There was $3 billion slashed from the general fund, but the actual flow of revenue later gave lawmakers about $1 billion more than they were expected to have for this year. We know that Governor Polis has introduced a stimulus proposal for $1.3 billion. Last December, some lawmakers came together and they were able to approve of, I think, $382 million. And a lot of that was really directed towards, you know, tax breaks for hard hit businesses, stimulus checks for lower income earners, et cetera. And then really for the purposes of what we're doing here in the district is there's going to be a lot of talk about how they're going to fund K through 12 education. So getting into education funding, we know on February 3rd, the Joint Budget Committee passed a bill draft and at least came to an agreement on paper to really address adjustments to school funding for the 2020-2021 school year. And a lot of that was issues directly related to drops in enrollment. Specifically at-risk student enrollment. And there was also lower than projected local tax revenues. So what that bill draft will do if passed is it will hold funding constant. It'll provide $41 million to address that lower than projected lower tax revenue, or local tax revenue, I should say. There will also be $19.2 million allocated in one-time funds. And that money is allocated to ensure that no district's 2020-21 revenue will drop by more than 2% below than what it was projected to receive. I have some good news. The district is not going to be going above that 2%. So bad news, we will not be getting additional money for that, but at least that's a really good situation. There's also going to be a reduction of 121.1 million in the 1.17 billion budget stabilization factor. And they're additionally going to allocate 25 million for rural districts as a result of that nicotine tax that was passed last year. All of which should result in an increase in per pupil funding. Again, with Governor Polis's stimulus proposal, he was asking for $1.3 billion. And I really point out that 200 million to transportation, just to point out that not all that money was directed for education. However, a lot of, the state does need money in a lot of areas that will impact our students regardless, including in transportation. And the General Assembly is going to be addressing issues for school finance next year, going back to those issues of enrollment, whether or not those students come back, particularly those at-risk students. And then there's going to be a lot of issues with in-person and remote multi-district online learners, because we know that multi-district online learners receive less per pupil. And I anticipate that there will still be a lot of students who will continue with those programs, even after we get through this pandemic, hopefully. But, like Mr. Talley, Ms. Mash alluded to earlier, when it comes to money, I can be a little bit scared at times, and it's pretty hard to explain. So I would urge you or beg of you to please speak with Ms. Sponsler and her amazing finance team if you have any questions. I'm not seeing a nod of approval, but we'll just assume that she agrees with that. I just want to go over quickly, the Colorado Association of School Boards did have 3 key legislative priorities. The first was investing adequately and sustainably in students in public schools. These are some of the focus areas to address that priority. The second priority was bolstering public schools through effective policies. I really want to direct your attention to that subpoint A. We have not seen this bill be introduced yet. However, I anticipate that most certainly there will be some kind of bill addressing an independent audit of the state's accreditation framework and accountability system. I know folks on both sides of the fence really want to address that this year, so we'll see if it gains some steam. And the last legislative priority from CASB is prioritizing student learning by preventing additional disruptions to learning. Again, I want to direct your attention to that bullet point A. There was a House bill that was introduced that we'll talk about here in a second. So far, there are 18 House bills that could have a direct and substantial impact on District 6 and some of our students and staff. I'll give you a second just to kind of peek through those. So, some of these might be statement bills, and I will go over just a few of these with you, but I ask that, at the end of this presentation, if any of these bills caught your attention and you'd like more information or would like me to do additional research, please feel free to ask and I can do that. So first, this House Bill 1025, non-substantive emails and open meetings law. This kind of redefines the parameters of what a meeting is. And so the bill states that electronic mail communication between elected officials that does not relate to the merits or substance of pending legislation or other public business is not a meeting for open meetings law purposes. Second, under House Bill 1059, this bill is fairly interesting because it's kind of redefining what a school district can do in the online learning environment. And so this bill would prohibit the district from prohibiting online students from having their parents be present in the online learning environment. It prohibits districts from recording the student without their prior written approval. But these last 2 bullet points I think are particularly interesting because, I think there's been a lot of issues even in our district with what students have kind of in their personal residence that may be kind of controversial. And so this bill would kind of prohibit districts from disciplining students perhaps on certain images that might be in their private residence. House Bill 1080, it's called the Non-Public Education and COVID-19 Relief Act. And I just want to point out that this bill does tie COVID-19 to an increase in private school enrollment. But what this bill really is it's just an attempt to establish a private school tuition income tax credit with a new title. House Bill 1103, media literacy implementation. This bill is really just addressing the dissemination of misinformation. Students have a lot of access to many different resources on the internet. So this bill would have the Colorado Department of Education create and maintain kind of a online resource bank of materials and resources pertaining specifically to media literacy. It wouldn't be providing a list of resources, but those resources about media literacy. House Bill 1104, this would give teachers, principals, and administrators a little bit more time to accrue the required PD hours. It's currently 5 years, and it would extend it to 7 years. It wouldn't require additional PD hours, but it would just give you more time for that. And then House Bill 1114, school district provision of internet services. While this might not necessarily apply to District 6, generally speaking, local governments need to get voter approval and need to meet other requirements before they're allowed to provide internet access, because that's defined as an advanced service. This bill would just get rid of that requirement for school districts when they're providing advanced services for remote learning. And really, I wanted to focus a lot more here on this 1125, suspend state assessments in the 2020-2021 school year. This is contingent first and foremost on a change to federal law or a waiver in federal law from the Federal Department of Education for the 2020-21 school year. Those numbers, as you might imagine, are the grade levels, and those are the subjects that they're attempting to suspend for this year. This bill would also prohibit the use of student academic growth or achievement measures when evaluating teachers and administrators. And it would also require that schools and school districts must implement the school plan type that was assigned the preceding school year. So we know that that continuum that existed last year would just extend again through this year. So it would really be based on that year before, the school plan type. For Senate bills, there are currently 11 bills that could have a direct and substantial impact on our students, if you want to just spend a couple minutes looking through those. And just to go over a few, this Senate Bill 13, reversing COVID-related learning loss. This is a bill that really, it has its heart in the right place. It's just unknown what fiscal impact this might have on the Colorado Department of Education, because what they would do is they would maintain a resource bank of examples of products and services that have demonstrated effectiveness of identifying and reversing student learning loss. So again, this could be great. We just don't know really what fiscal impact and what kind of movement of funds would be required for CDE to implement this. SB 17, sexual conduct by an educator. I just want to give you a little bit of background. There is a hearing coming up this Thursday, and that's that under current law, it is not a crime for a secondary teacher to have sexual contact with a student who is 18 years of age or older. This bill would provide that an educator who has sexual contact with a student who is 18 years of age or older would be a crime called abuse of public trust by an educator. And that would be a class 1 misdemeanor. And they would not be allowed to use consent as a defense under this law. And last, SB 81, this is something that we discussed last year. And this is really that limited waiver of anonymity under the Safe to Tell. And this is really just an attempt to prevent people from misusing Safe to Tell. But as I stated last year, I still have concerns about kind of waiving kind of really the purpose of Safe to Tell, but of course, that is not my decision to make. So with that, I will answer any questions or comments you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Fall. Are there any questions or comments from board members? Not sure who rang in first, but Mr. Talley, give it to you.
I actually am really excited and I love reading about legislation. I could probably sit here all day. I want to ask you just about every bill on there, but I'm going to try and narrow it down to some of the ones I find most important. Could you speak more or maybe give us more information on the House Bill 1119, the suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention?
So this one was recently introduced, so I will do some additional research and get back to you about that, because I'm just not sure.
Okay.
Ms. Solis?
I was just wondering if any of our local representatives are sponsors of any of these bills that we know of? I'm not sure who are the sponsors. I should have included that on this, but I can get back to you about that as well. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Mueller?
So I also was interested in House Bill 1067, college admission of use of national test scores, especially if we're talking about testing. I know CMAS has been our focus, but I think that also would impact us on whether we are going to implement the SAT. And if that's going to not be something that college admissions are going to value anymore, that'd be probably helpful to know if that needs to continue being something we take time out to do in our high schools.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I am curious to see what impact this would have on K through 12, because this is really more about higher education, but I think you're right there that this would impact kind of how we teach students, at least on those college admission tests, so.
Yeah, especially if we're going to use it as a graduation requirement or part of the portfolio, that we'll need to know that for sure.
Are there any other questions or comments?
I have one more, sorry.
No, don't apologize. Mr. Talley?
For 1059, are we seeing, or is the state seeing a lot of issues with, are they having issues, disciplinary issues with this? Is that why it's coming up, or where is this coming from?
I'm not sure what extent this is happening in other school districts, but I can imagine that we're not alone when we're facing these kinds of issues, because what is the reach of a school district, into the home is really the question here. But, when they're participating in an online class, you would hope that they wouldn't have anything that was really offensive. There is a clause in the bill that does still permit school districts to discipline a student or prevent them from displaying something if it kind of continually interferes. So it's not kind of a one-all, schools can't do anything. But I imagine that this has kind of been happening everywhere.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you for that update.
Thank you.
Paul, we appreciate your time and for your being here tonight.
We'll provide responses to the questions in your weekly bulletin.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Pilch. Our next item is public participation regarding non-agenda items. And we do have 4 people that are signed up to speak tonight. And as I look around the room, I'm guessing that there's only one. And it is our first speaker, Ms. Andy Lee.
Good evening again. As you know, Read Across America is happening on March 2nd, and I know a couple of you have reached out to the schools that you are partnering with to see if it's possible to read with them. I'm doing that as well. And we typically do a proclamation. So I would like to read it and present it to you as the board president, Mr. Matthews, and the Board of Education. And here it goes. Read Across America Proclamation. Whereas the membership of the Greeley Education Association stand firmly committed to promoting reading as the catalyst for our students' future academic success, their preparation for America's jobs of the future, and their ability to compete in a global economy. And Whereas the Greeley-Evans School District 6 has provided significant leadership in the area of community involvement in the education of our youth, grounded in the principle that educational investment is the key to the community's well-being and long-term quality of life. And whereas NEA's Read Across America, a national celebration of reading on March 2nd, 2021, promotes reading and adult involvement in the education of our community's students. Therefore, be it resolved that the Greeley Education Association Board of Directors calls on the Board of Education, members of the Greeley-Evans School District 6, to ensure that every child is in a safe place reading together with a caring adult on March 2nd, 2021. And be it further resolved that this body enthusiastically endorses NEA's Read Across America and recommits our community to engage in programs and activities to make America's children the best readers in the world. Signed, Andrea Lee, Greeley Education Association President.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. Certainly that is an interest of all of ours, and I meant to say this earlier for those who are still with us as we conclude this meeting. This week is, if you go to the Human Being, 22nd through the 26th, if you donate a protein snack or a gently used book, you can get your punch card punched. And it's a great way to help our kids get books into the home and ensure that they have every opportunity to be reading. And it's especially important as some of our kids still can't, for one reason or another, can't get into our buildings. And so just want to make everyone aware of that. And thank you again, Ms. Andy Lee. I think that is all that we have tonight. I don't see anyone else here to speak with us tonight. And so this meeting is adjourned.